Hi, welcome back to another TerranScapes video. So today I have a unique project. It's a work in progress, and it involves a customer-generated idea to create a series of modular pieces that will allow for boards to be stacked behind it to create a plateau, and then have side pieces like mountainside, cliffside, something along that kind of an idea to obscure, obviously the edges of the board, make a transition from the tabletop up to the plateau. A couple requirements for the project were that it be modular, so that pieces could be rearranged to form different size plateaus, different size walls against the table edge, that sort of idea. And that it be 6 inches in height, so that it has a substantial topography on the table. So that presented some challenges. I haven't done a project quite like this before. I've experimented with some end caps for boards in the past, but didn't really quite like how I had gone about it, and I thought this would give me a nice opportunity to revisit it, take it up a little bit in scale and size, and that affords, I think, some opportunities that are going to really dress it up. So what I'd like to do today is show you the set of pieces that I've been working on. Like I said, this is a customer check-in before I go to the painting and finishing stage. Things could be modified at this point just to make sure that we're both on the same page about how things are progressing. And it's a nice opportunity for viewers in general to see perhaps some ideas of how they could use some materials in their own terrain work, and also opportunities to see how this kind of an idea could really be expanded into a variety of formats to address, to really build up some sizable areas on tables in a variety of manners. So let's take a look at the work that's been done so far. I think I can explain it a little bit more in detail that way. So taking a closer look at these, now because the pieces are so large, this piece spans 20 inches by 6 inches high and has about an 8-inch depth on this particular piece to the farthest point, maybe 9 inches. What I'm going to try to keep pieces in their entirety in view and then bring things up close for you to take a look at. I don't know how the lighting's going to work for that, so hopefully it's going to be okay when the final video gets edited and posted. But taking a look at this piece, the customer's request was that, again, it matched the modular boards so the boards can be stacked behind them. All right, and that that means that I'm constricted to the sizes of the boards themselves, which is actually a nice manageable chunk to use in any case. So at 20 inches long, 6 inches high again, what I've done is I've tried to rock over the board using sort of railroad modeling techniques, whereby, and to show you a close-up of what that looks like on an end corner cap, sort of to make a corner, I should say, is I've taken individual rock castings, and then I've I have placed them on using Sculptamold. Sculptamold's a plaster of Paris kind of paper mache ground material. You add water to it, and you can get a variety of textures out of it, and it's a lightweight when it finishes, inexpensive to purchase, and very hard and durable when it cures. So I recommend, if you haven't looked at Sculptamold as a terrain sort of terrain material in the past, you might want to take a look at. They have it available at craft stores. It's not that hard to find. In any case, so what I've done is I've placed rocks, in various places, large castings, broken them up in shape and style, but trying to maintain a similar feel throughout. And then what I'm going to do is flock this entirely. I'm not going to go for the sand and the dry brushing base layers, because I think this is an area that's not traveled, and I'd like to have it have a little bit more of a lush look than some of the flatter areas. And then, sort of heavily vegetate around a couple key spots to sort of bring it to life and tie it all together. I think it's going to look fantastic like that when it's done. And so that's the general theme that's going to carry across all of the pieces. Now, as I said, the pieces are modular, and let's slide this over just a little bit. So all the pieces will seam up, and the 6-inch depth for the transition has been dictated by the cave section, which I'm going to show you in just a minute. So if you're wondering why there's a cut in, that depth is important, and I'll show you in a second why. So in order to have miniatures, let me get this out of the way. travel to the top of the plateau, one section will have a road. And the road has been carved to fit on a single 20-inch section because that way it doesn't straddle two pieces, which would void some of the modularity of the pieces. And the road actually is stable for miniatures approximately on, I'd say, about 90% of it. There's a couple areas where it's a little steep because of the distances traveled required, but overall it's very stable, and it's going to work well to allow miniatures to enter, at the side, climb all the way up to the top, and then be able to access the plateau on the top. This area here where it's a little undercut, I'm going to texture this to look like soil, and as though it's been carved out, dug out from the side of the mountain as the road was put in, and this will be a dirt road going up to the top. Again, the rocks embedded in the Sculptamold castings to give it some, variation in topography without having to do, a hand carving stonework, which would be incredibly arduous for, such large pieces with so much square foot area. Then, just to give you a look, of course, you could just place this one by itself and then place end caps around it, and there's going to be a little modification of some of the texturing on the sides here before it finally gets finished, but you get the sense that you could place this against a table edge with just two end caps and have a believable sort of butting out into the table to channel troop movement and the like. Let's get this out of the way and show you the last major section. Which is the cave. And the cave piece needs to be, within the 6 inches depth, so that I can believably, and I wanted to keep it on a 10-inch wide section because it's a unique piece and it may not always want to be placed on the table. I didn't want to devote an entire 20-inch piece to it. So I've put it on a 10-inch piece and then brought in the edges just a little bit on the sides here so that I could shorten the depth of the cave itself to, basically what is about 3.5 inches or so deep. This is to allow playing easily, to let me try that again, to easily be able to reach in, to be able to place miniatures in the cave and to have them pass through to the back side. Why is having them pass through to the back side make a difference? Because the customer has a large collection of Dwarven Forge pieces. And Dwarven Forge pieces, Dwarven Forge makes a series of modular terrain elements to represent caves, dungeons, underground water areas, things like that. And the customer would like to be able to place a dungeon behind this piece and use this as a transition between the outdoor world to the interior dungeon arena areas. That would require, and having the ability to reach in, pull out miniatures, and then be able to continue their movement into the interior. I think looking at this now, what I'd like to do is maybe open up the back of this just a little bit more so that the access from the rear is going to be a little bit easier, because I think because of these points that rise up so high, now that I'm looking at it a little more closely, I think it needs just a little more opening so you can get in there a little more easy to grab miniatures. But this depth is really what's needed to be able to reach in from both sides to grab miniatures and have them transition through. A final element for the cave that has yet to be completed but is underway is to tile the bottom of the cave entrance with stonework that's going to match to some degree the Dwarven Forge stone flooring that you see here. Now the Dwarven Forge stone flooring has a layered look, irregular shape, stones, and this mimics very closely the style that Herstart's molds, cavern floor molds produce. These are going to make great proxies for that. And so what I've done is carve the cave with a width approximately 3¼ inches wide, and that's going to just fit these pieces in to make the flooring. And what I'm going to do is tile about half the cave's floor out with these Herstart's pieces, and then have a dirt floor coming from this direction out to meet the outdoor world. So there's a nice transition between the two to get into the interior and not have an abrupt transition where you're looking in the back of the cave and see a dirt path that just suddenly turns into stone. That's going to get mounted on a thin sheet of styrene plastic card, and then I'll be able to glue that to the bottom, and that way it'll have support, although the pieces won't be based in general. So that gives you a little summary of how this project has been put together and is moving forward. One of the things that becomes readily apparent is that with just a few pieces you could create a very convincing table edge, entrance with a small footprint, but you could add other pieces. You could even, place these in a corner and then be able to have, let's see here, these are big so it's a little tricky to move them around. But for instance, you could place them in a corner of the table and then build up the boards behind this and then have a small plateau in the corner of the table rather than devote an entire, large area of the table to such a structure. So, in conclusion, it's an unusual project, but it has a lot of possibilities. Adding, a lot of height and variation along, sides of the tables. And so I'm very interested to, see how this project progresses and where the customer and I take this going forward. The customer will be, just for your information, the customer will be stacking blank boards that I've already sent him to, let me put this in frame, blank boards to represent the missing, void underneath, and then can put finished boards as the final layer so that they will have, a finished surface that matches the, general topography of the cliff sides or the mountain sides, and then onto the rest of the table. So this is going to afford opportunities for large plateaus on the table, like I said, boxing off corners, making a plateau against a table edge. There's quite a bit of variability and options with these, so I'm really excited to work on this project. The only caveat I have at the moment is, of course, that cave entrance in the back, opening it up in the back so that it's a little bit easier to access. And I was thinking down the road, I might like to create pieces that have a different seam length at the edge. Because there are going to be several sections, this is potentially going to be a very large plateau, because there are several sections that will be created in the sort of 20-inch length width, it might be possible to do a couple of them out to 8 or maybe even 9 inches wide at the unions, which would allow some sections to come out much wider and then the others. And I think from a visual aspect is going to provide a little more variability to the appearance of the plateau rather than constraining all of them to the exact same seam at the edge. That reduces modularity slightly, but if several pieces are done at that dimension, then you have several pieces within that side or sides that could be matched up to each other, and then you'd have basically like two pieces that have various connecting widths. But that's something to look for the future. At the moment, what I really wanted to do is just work on this single set. This is going to construct a table edge wall basically that's going to have a distance of approximately, I'm doing the math in my head, about 62 inches in length. And then it'd be easy to add pieces to this in the future to create, the side walls for a large plateau and eventually the back side. So we're going to take a look at how this is coming along. I'm glad you joined me for this, and hopefully it's maybe inspired you on some techniques and ideas that you could bring to your own tabletop. Oh, cat. And I'll of course be following up with videos of the progress of this project as we move forward, so keep your eye on the channel, and I'll be back pretty soon to give you another update. Thanks.